Thank you so much for joining this session. This is very exciting for us, particularly with the Rasa course going live today. We always start our presentations with this gentleman here, and you might know him. It's from the movie Her, and Her takes place in the near future. And it's about a guy that buys an OS, a voice assistant, and he installs it on his computer. And he starts talking to it. At the beginning, it's incredibly awkward and it's very uncomfortable. But then, they get to know each other and they start talking and they become friends and they become very good friends. And they even fall in love and have this wonderful relationship until he discovers that she's actually talking to tens of thousands of people at the same time. And then he ends up in the uncanny valley and drops out of the experience and never wants anything to do with her ever again. But it sort of shows us that people in AI, we will be living together, we will be working together, so we need to learn to communicate with each other. And that's why we're going to have a new job, an important job called conversation designer. And that's really what we do at CDI. We train and certify conversation designers to make AI assistants more helpful and natural at scale. What we see, obviously, and we all know, is the modern business is looking to automate about 85% of their conversations on their website, in the app, on voice assistants, in the call center, everywhere where you're talking to people. You want to automate these conversations. And more companies are building in-house teams. And some of them have teams of 100 people, some of them have 20, 30. You just see this big wave where companies are really recognizing conversation design as an important job to help them unlock the potential of conversational AI technology. And just like you cannot imagine a company without engineers today, you cannot imagine a company without conversation designers 5 years from now. But what is conversation design really? And I think this one really sums it up, right? If you have a conversation between an AI assistant and a human, then two things stand out. One of them has an artificial brain and the other one has a human brain. And they both have their own limitations and capabilities and different triggers that they need to function. So the artificial brain, it needs to understand intent and entities and context and variables. So obviously we have natural language understanding technology that translates natural speech into structured data, allowing the AI assistant to respond. But on the other hand, we have a human, and a human wants empathy and helpfulness, and sometimes it wants a compliment and some encouragement, right? So when we create language, we really need to make sure that that is what we give to people. And if we want to have proper conversations between people and AI, then natural language creation needs to be equally important as natural language understanding. And they should all be equally important. Right, so if we have an artificial brain talk to a human brain, then we need to understand technology, psychology, and language. And while a lot of projects don't really make it from POC to production, it's because there's so much emphasis on the technology and not enough on the psychology and the human language. And that's really what we need to change. And that's what we do at CDI. And for that, we see three main roles. So there's the conversation designer. That person really thinks about the structure of the conversation, right? What is the sort of the UX side of it? What's the best flow of information? Then we have conversational copywriters. They turn words into resonating dialogue. They think about personality. They think about psychology. And they really want to make sure that people have a great experience. And then there are the AI trainers. These are the people that turn data into understanding. Right, so they collect the utterances, turn them into inclusive training phrases, implement them in Rasa, use the data to optimize it. And together with AI trainers, conversation designers, and conversational copywriters, you're building a team that really allows you to have human-centric conversations at scale. And it doesn't matter if it's voice or chat. You want to have these three capabilities embedded in your team. So what does that workflow look like? We really see three main steps when designing AI assistants. You start with the requirements, right? And the requirements is really what kind of technology are we using? What kind of conversations are we going to be having? So these are our use cases. Who are we going to be having them with? That's our audience, the people that we're going to be talking to. And who is best to do that on our behalf, right? And that's your bot personality, your bot persona that defines your tone of voice. And then we have happy conversation design, where we focus on the happy flow. and the detailed conversation design, where we really focus on training the language models, handovers to web or live agent, or can be anything, and repair flows, etc. So let's talk about persona first. This one's always quite nice. Nice little face there. This one's interesting too. So everybody now in this virtual room sees a building, but we also see a face in the building, right? We see two eyes and a mouth. And this one's really cute. It's called pareidolia, right? And it's really the tendency to perceive a specific, often meaningful image in a random or ambiguous visual pattern, right? And people see people everywhere. And that also means that when they talk to an assistant, they very quickly recognize that as human, and they sort of lose themselves in that experience. So that puts a lot of responsibility on us as designers, because people will forget it's a bot. And this work is obviously, it's shared a lot wide for speech. It says that within 1.5 seconds, people create an image of who they're talking to. Is it a man or a woman, right? As soon as they hear a voice within 1.5 seconds, they think, is this a man or a woman? What do they look like? How can they be of value to me? Where are they from, right? How do they relate to me? So when you have an AI assistant that's talking to 1 million people a day, those 1 million people are all creating an image of who they're actually talking to. And if you are a brand and you have your brand is your asset, and you've worked very hard to develop that, and you want to protect that. And if you have 1 million people creating an image of who they're actually talking to, you lose control over that brand. And that's not what you want. So you want to have very carefully design your own tone of voice and your own personality for your AI assistant. Otherwise, it's going to be inconsistent, less likable, and less trustworthy. And you're going to end up in that uncanny valley, right? And we all know this, but in general, when a bot is very mechanical, people like it. If it's very human-like, people like it as well. But when it's somewhat in the middle, we're not really sure, and it creates a very uncanny experience, and we drop out of the experience and we don't care for it, like the movie Her. And the reason for this is that people use a different part of their brain when they interact with something than when they interact with someone. And when your brain is confused and conflicted about what it's actually doing and what it's engaging with, you're creating an experience that people just want to quit, and it will destroy your AI assistant. So you want to create this bot personality and give it a backstory and give it a tone of voice. So here's just an example of Henry, who's 45, and we've given him a background. He's from Edinburgh. He now lives in New York. He used to work in hospitality. He's a butler now. And you want to give him an entire biography, because everybody on the team will then understand how to approach certain writing and certain problems in your design work. So this is part of the requirements phase. So you want to have this bot personality as a deliverable in that requirements phase before you do any design work. You want to understand how you're going to be talking to people when you design conversations. Now I want to talk you through a simple use case of buying some sneakers. And I want to talk you through the happy conversation design flow and sort of show you all the steps that we incorporate to create successful AI assistants. So happy conversation design looks like this. We take our use case, then we look at the bot needs and the user needs. Then we do sample dialogue. We do Wizard of Oz test and an expert rewrite. And I'll take you through the steps so you can see for yourself what all those words mean, right? So we start with a canvas. So we don't do any flow charting or start developing stuff in Rasa immediately. No, we actually want to mentalize the situation, what we're dealing with, right? So we look at, where is someone actually while they're having this conversation? It's a completely different mindset when it's rush hour and you're on the train, or you just put the kids to bed. It's 8 o'clock and you're having a cup of tea at the kitchen table. Those things really change the dynamics of a conversation. So let's fill in this canvas for buying sneakers, right? So we're going to assume that somebody's at home on the computer when they're reaching out to buy sneakers. Maybe their partner's in the next room, but not, interfering with the conversation. They're not really in a rush, but they're excited to get running again. So what do they want to do? The human wants to buy cool sneakers, want to know which ones to get. They want to, motivated by getting fit and they want to look cool, but they're really worried that, they might get the wrong sneakers. That's actually, what if I get the wrong ones and I show up at the park and my friends laugh at me because I got, the old edition and I need better ones, right? Or I don't have the right colors or whatever. So it expects the assistant to help select the right sneakers, and it's really afraid to make the wrong decisions on its own. So that's sort of the human side of this conversation. But from the AI assistant, the AI assistant has certain superpowers. So it can help you select sneakers and add them to the cart. It doesn't recognize people, doesn't do transaction, but it does know what's in stock, right? And the questions that we need to ask, so the entities we need to extract are really the running goal, the shoe size, the price point, the colorway. And the behavior that we promote is really adding it to cart and upselling a bunch of things. Now that we have an understanding of this conversation, we're going to do sample dialogue. And what this means is that we sit two people back to back from each other, and they're going to have this conversation. So one person is going to study the canvas of the human side. So they're going to get into that mindset where they're going to be like, all right, I want to get sneakers because I want to get fit and start running again. That's what I'm motivated about, but I'm really insecure. I'm not really, savvy when it comes to fashion. So I'm going to need some advice. I don't want to make any mistakes. And then, so they study that. So the other person studies the side of the AI assistant. They both get into character, like improvisational theater. They have the conversation. And in the beginning, it's completely messy, right? Somebody, they'll ask a question and it's chaotic, but because they speak out loud and they get into character, all the information that's relevant for this conversation is going to come out, right? And it allows us through a few iterations and role-playing exercises to understand the most natural structure of the conversation, right? And that's sort of the actual design process, and allows us to make it very human-centric instead of flowcharty. If that's a word. So once we have these conversations, we're going to write some conversation design fundamentals, right? And this is part after the sample dialogue. We want to write some fundamentals in conversation design so that we can validate it through a Wizard of Oz test. So let's look at some of these. Okay, you want to buy some sneakers. Do you know which one? So okay is what we call an acknowledgement, right? And it means that, we're just giving you the heads up that we've heard you. Very important in voice. It's like, we know we've heard you. We're not communicating any value, but we're here. Then we're going to add an implicit confirmation. You want to buy sneakers, right? So by repeating what the user said, the user now knows that we understood him. And that tells him that whatever we're going to say next is going to be relevant for them. All right. So that's why these confirmations are incredibly important. Okay, you want to buy sneakers. Do you know which ones? That's the prompt, right? And the prompt tells the user, okay, now it's your turn to speak again, right? So it's a very clear check. Now I'm prompting you to engage, right? So these are conversation design fundamentals. And obviously for this use case, we would have a bunch of these messages to get through the whole thing. Acknowledgement, confirmation, prompt. So we could now test the entire conversation. And we do that with a Wizard of Oz test. And Wizard of Oz is really, we stick to our script and people can speak freely, right? And they can speak freely, we stick to our script, and we discover with about 5 to 10 tries what makes sense and what doesn't. And in our case, let's say that we discover that people simply aren't ready to buy yet, right? We try to shove them sneakers down their throat, but they're not ready yet. So we have some issues. There's a few flags on the play and things that we need to improve. So what we do then is we go to the expert rewrite here. All right, so we've done our canvassing, we've done our sample dialogue, we've created our fundamentals, we validated it. Now we need to apply some behavior design. And what we do then is look to BJ Fogg, his behavior model for the expert rewrite. And it pretty much means that we can prompt desired behavior by increasing motivation and ability. And I'm not going to go into great detail about this, but every time you want to design for specific behavior, you can look at motivation, ability, and certain prompts, right? So these are some of the copywriting techniques that you can apply when you design these conversations. So in motivation, we're going to use social proof, anticipatory enthusiasm. In ability, we can use some choice architecture and see if we can then improve this one message that we just wrote. Okay, you want to buy sneakers. Do you know which ones? Let's add anticipatory enthusiasm. Okay, I'm going to help you find the right sneakers. Does that sound good? All right, so now I'm already putting the image in someone's mind that they're actually going to have the right sneakers. All right, so we're taking away some of the anxiety that they have. But let's see if we can do more. Let's do some expectation management. Okay, to help you find the right sneakers, I'm going to ask you 3 simple questions. Does that sound good? All right, so now we're adding expectation management, and we're taking away a lot of stress. When somebody reaches out and we tell them exactly what's going to happen, it takes away stress and they will actually continue the conversation. It increases motivation. Let's use social proof. Okay, to help you find the right sneakers, I'm going to ask you 3 simple questions. For most people, this only takes a minute. Does that sound good? All right, so now we're applying. This is the conversational copywriter. So the conversation designer did sort of the fundamental structure. Now this is the conversational copywriter that is applying behavior design and psychology to increase our success rate. But let's see if we can actually do more. Let's say we're doing a chatbot and we can use some buttons. What can we do then? We can apply choice architecture. Okay, to help you find the right sneakers, I'm going to ask you 3 simple questions. For most people, this only takes a minute. Does that sound good? Yes, no, tell me more. This is how choice architecture works, right? If I present more positive options, the odds of someone selecting positive options greatly increase, right? But maybe I want to apply some personality. Let's say I am a sports brand and I have my bot persona is designed around sports retail, right? And I'm just as excited about running as you are. Let's see what we can do then. Okay, to help you find the right sneakers, I'm going to run you through 3 simple questions. For most people, this only takes a minute. Ready, set, go. Then go, nah, let's do this, right? So these are all the things that we apply during the expert rewrite. So this is the conversational copywriter that really takes it to the next level. And once we've done that, that's when we go to detailed conversation design. All right, so we've canvassed, we've done our role playing, we've done the Wizard of Oz test, we've done the expert rewrite to really figure out what conversation we need to design. Then you usually get sign off from your stakeholders, get a little stamp, and then we move it to detailed conversation design. All right, so we're going to start, collecting these utterances and training the model. A lot of times, what you do during the Wizard of Oz test, let's say you have 10 people interact with your assistant. Whatever they say are great training phrases as well, right? Because they're really in the context of the conversation rather than someone that did the same use case in your live chat, for example. All right, so we're going to start training the model and start implementing it in Rasa. We're going to be thinking about the long tail, right? When do we hand it over to an agent or to a website? We really want to have 80% of people go through 20% of the conversational path. All right, and that's really, our high value use cases. Think of it this way, right? If I'm a restaurant and 4 people want a table at 8 o'clock, then the chatbot should be able to do it. If they're 13 and 2 of them are in a wheelchair and 3 of them are vegan and 2 of them are gluten-free, they probably should just give us a call, and that's fine. The chatbot doesn't have to solve all those problems. Let's just focus on 80% of the people and make sure that they go through 20% of the conversational path. And then obviously our repair flows. What if we don't understand what people say, or what if we think we do, but turns out that we don't? What if there's a task failure, people just start talking altogether? How do we win them back, right? So that's what you do during detailed conversation design. Then you start implementing that, you start deploying that, and then you start optimizing that, obviously, through your analytics. So this is really one workflow that we see conversational design teams use around the world. That's pretty successful so far. And these use cases, obviously, they come from business, data science, and analytics. We run them through happy conversation design. Then stakeholders here sign off, and then we bring them to detailed conversation design. So in our online academy, here you see all the different things that you can learn as a conversational team, right? So here you see some of the things around the happy conversation design, detailed conversation design, but there's also fundamentals that you just need to start thinking about as a design team. Turn taking, prompt verbosity, tapering, Jenga techniques, what you're going to do with all the error handling, and particularly the increasing motivation. And I think increasing motivation is not necessarily to always drive sales, right? It's not to always sell someone a product. It's also in customer service when we're dealing with very complicated issues, and it's just a long conversation. I can increase motivation in a service path, in a service journey, to make sure people get to the end of it, right? Um, so that's around increasing motivation, and then around bot personality. How do you write jokes, do seasonal content, create Easter eggs, etc. So there's a lot of content and a lot of things to learn. And then around AI training specifically, and I think that is going to fit in very well with the Rasa crowd. It's really the theory of training an AI, building it, with the training phrases, sourcing them, cleaning them up, implementing them, linking with conditions, entity conditions. There's so much to learn. And then improving the AI assistance. And we really see, and I think that's one of the key challenges that a lot of companies face right now. There's the engineers, and then there's the designers. And the AI trainer is often someone that kind of sits between those developers and those designers. They're the bridge between the two. So all of the content that you see here is for the AI trainers that are going to really help unlock the potential of Rasa as a conversational AI technology. And therefore, we're incredibly proud and happy to officially teamed up with Rasa now. So the workshop that they've been doing, you can now follow that on our website. You can just go to conversationsdesigninstitute.com/courses/Rasa and follow that amazing workshop and learn about this great technology. And that's it from me. If you want to reach out, connect with me, I'm pretty easy to find.